What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Kamen Rider Build episode 44. This episode is called The End of Evolto, and this episode is the second to last episode before the main story supposedly is believed to end. Now, what does that mean? Well, there's 4 more episodes after that. So the last episode people are saying is going to be episode 49. The reason why I say the next episode people are suspecting will be the last episode is mainly because they're thinking that following that they'll have this kind of post story that will connect into Kamen Rider Zeo, which is the next Rider season. Typically in past years they've had it in a number of seasons where the next season's main rider will show up for part of the story, and it usually won't be like part of the main story. It will be kind of like an extension of it that, you know, acts as a transitional point, so that way people get a taste of what the next rider is without actually having to get fully immersed in the story right away. That way they have something to go off of. It's not a thing that Sentai does all that often. They've done like the movie versus specials where they kind of show you a glimpse, but like as far as writers go, that they've been doing that thing for a couple years at least. So anyway, moving on to today's episode. The episode begins with us seeing that Kazumi and Gentaku head over to Faust hideout, where they are put into nebula gas chambers and exposed to more gas so that they can become Lost Smash. Well, in their cases, they're so strong that they don't instantly are prone to, you know, the rages and the anger, but they do gain the power at least. You know, in other words, they don't become like mindless zombies that do the bidding of Faust. They still have a sense for them. They're still able to control themselves in that way. So when they gain their dosage of power, they instantly afterwards break out, but their new found strength isn't something that they can really control all that well, and that's something that's pretty noteworthy right away. Following this, what we do end up seeing is that Sawa is talking to Sento and Ryoga about how apparently Kazumi and Gentaku headed to the Faust base, so they end up heading there, and what happens is that they end up helping them escape, and what ends up occurring is that Sento and Ryoga are there. We end up seeing Sento in Tang form and Ryoga in Cross Z Magma form fighting against some guardians, I'm guessing. It's very quick, like you barely even see what they're actually fighting, but then shortly afterwards what we do end up seeing is that Sento ends up fighting his father, who's in comics form, and his father mentions something about his powerlessness and about how in the current state of things they'll never be able to defeat Evolto. And what happens is that he ends up punching into Sento's hazard trigger, and it leads to him being paralyzed, but then also being sent out of the hideout location, which kind of makes it out as if he's trying to protect his son, because later on he says he let me go, and when Sento's father goes to talk to Utsumi about how he got away, it's almost as if he was kind of trying to save his son and let him live. So in other words, he may be evil, but he's not all evil. In other words, he's maybe taking advantage of the situation, but at the same time acting as if he's working on their side. It's a little bit weird, but it kind of makes sense. So what does end up happening from here eventually is that everyone heads back to the base. They discuss different things. What we do end up discovering right away is that Kazumi has much greater strength. In fact, he pokes Sento and it launches him back and he falls over, and Gentaku also has this increased strength. Now we do end up seeing flashbacks of how they talk to each other before they ended up going to the Faust hideout, just prior to the nebula gas incident. And following this, what does end up happening is that they're discussing how they're going to work together, that they're friends and everything like that, and Sawa mentions, well, I guess I'm not going to need this pill because I was going to give it to you in case you weren't going to fight, this huggable pillow of Mitten. And the thing is that he takes advantage of the situation, pretends that he's not going to fight with him, but then he says, well, if I have this pillow, then I will, just to get the pillow. So he tries to take advantage of the situation, and then he's about to hug the mitten pillow, but then suddenly Sawa and Mizora are just annoyed and fed up with his actions and go up to him and punch him in the face until he falls over. So that's an interesting thing that happens. It's kind of funny. Following that, what does end up happening is that they are trying to figure out what they can do. We do end up seeing that Sento and Ryoga eventually head down to the base. Sento ends up creating a blizzard knuckle, which is a different version of the magma knuckle that he uses for the Cross E magma mode. This knuckle will allow him to have even greater strength and be way more useful against Evolto, so that's a pretty interesting thing. And he tries to use it. It's not a successful attempt. He tries it a bunch of times. He even tries it in the driver, and it still doesn't work. And then what happens is that we end up seeing at the Floss base that they're discussing things, how they need to get more Lost Smash bottles, and that Sento is one of the ones that they need to get from, and he also has the Lost Smash bottle that he got from them in the past, so that's all important to consider. So then what does end up happening is that we end up hearing, I'm trying to think how this goes about happening. Eventually he ends up Sento heads off to some remote location. He ends up getting a call from Evolto, basically telling him that he needs to bring the lost bottle with him to a fight. And what happens is that Sento's really angry. He throws the phone that he has against the ground, and then following this he heads back to the base, where it turns out that Gintaku cooks a pasta dish for Sawa and Mizora. It's awful because he only eyeballed the dish that Kazumi gave him rather than actually taking the time to really make the recipe properly. So that's an important thing. What does end up happening is that Kazumi mentions the fact that it has the same taste and the same ingredients, yet it's not the same. And yet the thing is that this kind of helps him realize that his father maybe was hinting at something when he was talking to him in the past, and that maybe he was trying to help him discover a way to defeat Evolto. So that what that does lead to is that eventually in the nighttime when everyone's sleeping, Sento decides to head out for the night and maybe go and confront Evolto with the Blizzard knuckle. So he decides that maybe he'll use it this time, and he heads off to where Evolto is located, and he tries to be very quiet about it. But what does end up happening is that when he arrives there, he's about to fight Evolto alone, and Evolto's in his black hole mode. But what happens is that suddenly Ryoga, Kazumi, and Gintaku show up, and they say, you don't think you were going to do this alone, and also, that's my knuckle. So he ends up taking the Blizzard knuckle from Sento so that he can use it. And what happens is that we end up seeing that all four of them transform together, and this transformation is one of the coolest things ever to see. Just to see all four of them transform together and stand next to each other, and then there's this big attack that goes off by Evolto that leads to this big explosion in the background. It looks amazing. So that all happens. Very exciting to see. We end up seeing some great combat sequences, though Evolto seems to be way more powerful than they are, even with the four of them together and with their newfound strength from Kazumi and Gintaku. They still don't stand a chance. So what does end up happening is that eventually Ryoga decides to use the Blizzard Knuckle. It does help. They do manage to do some pretty decent damage, and at one point he manages to use the Blizzard Knuckle against the Evil trigger, because he recognizes the fact that, Sento has the Hazard trigger and Evolto has the Evolve trigger. So in other words, they're very connecting back to that ingredients and taste thing. They're similar. They're the same ingredients, but the taste is different. In other words, how they're done. Because they have similar effects, but they're not the same overall. So what does end up happening is that he ends up bashing against his evil trigger, and it leads to him being paralyzed, but also it leads to a knockout for him, where they end up beating him down. And then following this, Evolto explodes and is destroyed, but what's left behind is the lost bottles. So that's a very important detail to consider, that the lost bottles are left behind. Now at the same time, we do end up seeing that in the meantime that Utsumi and Sento's father are watching all this occur, and when the lost bottles are found, Sento goes to claim them, and what happens is that he realizes that suddenly his father appears and says this was all according to plan, and so he has the 3 bottles that Evolto left behind. Now, one of the other things is that as far as what he gained from his father initially was the whole aspect of teamwork and knowing that working together they can do a lot, versus working alone where they're going to not be successful and they're going to lose instantly. So in other words, is that teamwork aspect that does everything for them, that leads to them realizing what they need to do in order to be successful against Evolto. So keep that in mind if you're wondering what was the big thing that his father provided for him. It was that knowledge of teamwork, which is really important. So as far as things go, yes, his father does end up getting the bottles. He actually comes in using Hawk Gatling mode to quickly sweep them up and get them in his hands so he can use the dark panel. And so as far as things go, the episode pretty much ends there with him standing with the lost bottles that he claimed, and I believe the panel as well. And as far as things go, Evolto is pretty much dust at this point. Though, what we do end up seeing in the preview for the next episode is that apparently we are going to be seeing a new monster form, which you maybe think to yourself, what is that monster that we see? That's not his father, if you're wondering. That's actually supposed to be Evolto's true form, his Martian form, a form that we hadn't seen yet, though there had been images shown a few weeks ago of what it was going to look like. So it's not like people had no idea. Some people don't know anything about this. I knew because they released images online about a week or so ago showing what his true form is supposed to look like. So if you see the preview, that's something that was already shown in it. It also does seem that there will be some interesting interaction between Sento's father and Sento regarding the relationship, so that will be interesting to see. And just in general, I'm looking forward to seeing where things will go from here. I'd love to know your guys' opinions about this episode. Again, very, very soon, Kamen Rider Zio will be coming out, so look forward to that. I am going to do a video in the next couple of days, maybe tomorrow if I have time, on Kamen Rider Zio. I want to do a big discussion on the new merchandise and a whole bunch of other things that are happening. This season is very similar to Kamen Rider Decade with the whole legendary rider aspect of it, so he'll be using powers of past riders. So I'll have a whole discussion about his abilities, about what we know so far, rumors that we've been hearing, like the supposed rumor that maybe Kamen Rider Zio is a girl and not a guy. We'll talk about that in that video. Again, that's for later, but I just wanted to bring it up in advance so that you guys know that there will be a discussion. I wanted to discuss it last week, but I just didn't have any time. I was too busy last week. So please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video, and shortly after this I should also be releasing the Lupin Ranger versus Power Ranger review. So bye guys.